for, you know, school funding has always been a challenge for all of us. And we're having this informational meeting, and maybe I'm going to let you introduce everybody. We have some experts from the State Department and legislator and legislative session, but you know, it's very rare that we get to sit down in a small in a small group to talk to people. You know, a chamber does it, retired teachers, and churches, and so we thank you for the opportunity.
We're glad to be here, and I'm sorry we're running a little behind. Of course, we always underestimate how long it's going to take us to get one meeting done and get to the next one. But I'm Amy Carter. In November, of course, I hope to be your state representative, but anyway, I'm currently serving as your state representative either way. This is actually, you get voted.
Okay.
My other job, besides serving in the Georgia General Assembly, is that I teach at Lowndes High School, and I'm on the 60% schedule so that I can do both jobs. I tried to do both at 100% and realized that I was wearing myself out. So that's what my situation is. I have brought, really what I want to do is be more of a moderator, and I have brought some of the folks that I lean on in Atlanta to come to talk to you about the questions that you have as a school board regarding funding. So, I mean, you know, we can talk about what you need to, but these are just the things that I want them to talk to you about. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, if they will. I'll start with you, Representative Dixon.
Good evening. I'm Representative Tom Dixon from the Dalton, Georgia area, northwest corner of the state, the other end of the state, but an area that's somewhat like this area. And I had to drive through that big metro area to get here, but we are basically a fairly rural area where I live. I'm glad to be here. I've served for 8 years in the legislature, and now I'm chairman of the Appropriations Subcommittee that deals with K-12 education. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean I get to make all the decisions about funding for K-12 education. We make that point real right from the start. She does.
Oh, you see that target he just put up in the back? I'm just kidding. My name is Martha Wiggs, and I work for the House of Representatives. I am the director of our House Budget and Research Office. We have 19 employees. 10 of those work on budget as well as standing committee issues. They're kind of like their policy area experts. We have 2 who work on K-12 education, and single analysts work on other areas of the budget like public safety or higher education, for instance. This has 1. We have a terrific staff. We really are looking forward to hearing some suggestions, some things that you would like for us, perhaps our staff, to look into some more, to get some more ideas. We are a very small staff, just like you. The representatives cut my staff by 25% for a savings of 15% this year. And so we've all taken on added responsibilities. And so it would really help us to have additional ideas from you, and particular hotspots where you think we might be able to apply our knowledge and try and help some more. Thanks for having us.
My name is Lou Byers. I'm with the Department of Education. My job is the Director of Financial Review. And what that means is that I work with the school districts and basically work with them from the Department of Education. If you're having problems or troubles, we try to assist with that. We provide information. We take the funding and provide the allotment sheets, and basically work with you, communicate with y'all on the funding, and provide any assistance we can, and also just to watch over the district to make sure that try to help districts from getting into financial trouble. And once a district gets into financial trouble, we'll work with them to try to get out. I do a lot of that with the districts as well. So that's sort of my job with the Department of Education.
All right, what I wanted to give you tonight, and I've given you, and I hope that you got both sheets, and if you didn't, I'll be glad to give those out. but you should have one sheet that at the top it says agency list by policy area, and it has a back, front and back. And then the other one, it does not have a title, but it starts at the top, the column B, the second column starts FY 2013. You all have that? Well, I know that y'all are on a tight schedule with the board meeting coming up at 6, so we're going to delve into that a little deeper as of, oh, sure. At 6 o'clock, we'll just go a little deeper into it. But I did want to show you that the funding, state funds for education, you see it, the second item, number 23, 37.06% is the amount of dollars that went to K-12, of course, with 53.5% going toward the entire educational area. But we're going to review that a little later with Trey primarily. But we're really here, we want to hear from y'all. And what we want from you is your ideas. We want to know what you think we can do to help you, as much as, you know, we welcome your questions, but we also want to know how we can help you.
Well, let me jump into it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, you won the bet. Yeah, but you know what's going on in the state financially. We know what's going on in the state. Get past that. In 2002, using that as a baseline, from then to now, austerity cuts for Brooks County have risen to over, we're right at $2 million. And what that means, of course, is that you funded $2 million less than what your own QBE formula said you should fund, but you knew we weren't going to close the schools, you being the state. Now, I'm looking at y'all, I don't mean you individually. So the state knew that the 7 of us, the local board, would raise ad valorem taxes to make up the difference. Because if we had not, today, out of the 2,300 students in the Brooks County school system, over 300 of those students could not be served. We wouldn't have teachers. So clearly, that the taxes have been raised. They were raised indirectly from the legislature by pushing it down to the state, rather than raising sales tax or raising income tax, which are your two, so I understand, that's your two big money makers. Understand too, we've been getting 53, 54% of the state budget these 10 years. We haven't lost our share. And of course, I've got a lot of love for roads and bridges and the university system and law and order, all the things that the state provides. So understand that. Problem is, what has happened, you've shifted the cost of educating a child to nearly 50% on the local school. Well, we were, let's see, in 2003, we were contributing on an FTE basis less than $2,000 a child, and the state was contributing $4,100. Well, today the state's contributing barely $4,000. 10 years later, the state is paying $200 a child less to educate a child in Brooks County, and we've increased our share by some $3,000. Because today the FTE for a child in Brooks County is just over $7,000 state and local funding. But y'all know this because it's happening in every system in the state. And without beating the horse to death, here's the issue. People north of Macon look at people south of Macon, and they consider us poor rural schools. I don't mind that because we know we're delivering a good educational product. But if we have to continue competing with the wealthy schools in the greater Atlanta area, one day that perception will become reality. And shame on all of us if that happens. Because a child born and raised in Quitman, Georgia, deserves the same effort from the state of Georgia as a child that's born in Dunwoody or Alpharetta. Now, to make that happen, y'all are going to have to find some money. You're going to have to get the money, send it to us so we don't have to tax the homeowners in Brooks County to finish that education, because we are at the limit. I mean, and I don't mean we're at 20 mills, we're at 15 mills. But we've got people that really, if we raise the taxes on them again, they'll lose their house. And that's not an exaggeration. So don't think we've got 5 more mills out there that we can get. We don't. And I don't believe the 7 of us have the appetite to go after it if we could, because people are really up against it. Specifically for Brooks County, we do have a lot of land that's agricultural land. It's all in agricultural covenants. So that shifts the pie more to the residential homeowner. And just drive around, you can learn a lot more if you'll ride this county than you can in this room, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Now, it's a great place to live, but it does not have the wealth that Lake Burton and Raven County has. It doesn't have the wealth that White County has, and White County is having to lay off its home ec. I mean, the lady retired, the home ec teacher is not going to be replaced. Home economics done away with in White County, Georgia, and that's a much more affluent area than we are right here. That's the message, and I said, now it's up to you. I mean, my vote is with Amy. Now, you can go back and you can get some courage, and you can increase state revenue. However you do it, it doesn't matter, because you've already increased taxes on us locally. We had to raise taxes to meet this obligation that the state ran away from by saying we don't have the money. It's a true statement. But again, it's up to you now. If you don't do it, you're going to see in 5 more years, you are going to be able to go south of Macon and see what people think exists already. It's not that way now. I think every school system in the state has bent over backwards to go through this 10-year problem of resources at the state level. But you've got to decide, are you going to obey the Constitution of the state of Georgia? Are you going to make education a priority as the Constitution says you're supposed to do? Or are you going to just duck behind the curtain, push it back on the county, and one day the difference between Macon North and Macon South will be so drastic that you'll all be ashamed. Well, that's my speech, and I thank you were attentive, and I thank you for it. Don't take it personally. Take that message back to Atlanta, okay?
You know, it's not really north of Macon, south of Macon. You got to skip over the metro, because up where I am, it's simple, very simple.
Right.
In fact, it was my county, where I was superintendent at one point, not while I was superintendent, that sued the state over the inequities in funding that brought about QBE back in the 1980s. Because we were at that point one of the 25 in the lowest quartile funding-wise in our county. But we had within our county Dalton City Schools, which was one of the 7 wealthiest systems in the state. And so the inequity was very glaring. And I can assure you that as we have done just exactly what you said and reduced funding from the state and pushed some of that burden back onto the local systems, I've heard from my local superintendent who followed me in that position with much of the same information. And I can tell you that none of the 4 of us here have a real answer for it. It's not just a matter of having the will to do it. It's getting.
You need about 120 more votes. You and Amy get 120 to go with you,
right.
And you make it law, and the governor signs it. It's not that hard. It's just,
you got to have that 120,
but
because the governor's not going to sign it. We're raising taxes. The governor won't sign it.
But like I said, and we can't yell loud enough down here to let the Atlanta Journal know that you are raising taxes. You're just doing it through ad valorem taxes through the back door. We haven't backed off on our commitment to education. We've just shifted it to the and I'm repeating myself.
Right. And you know, and I know we've done that. We've tried in the last few years, especially, to provide some options to try to give you some breathing room without having to do too much raising local taxes, but some of the flexibility that we've tried to give systems. And I understand that you don't end the burden by giving flexibility. It only goes so far, but I try to tell folks, as long as we're going to keep funding levels where they are, we've got to lower our expectations. You can't send them less money and expect them to do everything they were doing before. I mean, that just doesn't make sense. But we are in the process right now. Do you want to talk about QBE?
Sure.
She's the boss today. I'll be her boss.
Yeah, you're the one on it.
We are in the process of looking at the quality basic education funding formula. We passed a state law that created this commission. It's got members appointed by the governor, the speaker, and the lieutenant governor. And there's 4 subcommittees that are looking at various functions of it. And it's staffed by folks from her department and from the Senate side, where they have their own budget office. And we've got to answer some fundamental questions that get to what you're talking about. Is this a valid way to fund our schools? In other words, using full-time equivalencies, which is what we went to under QBE. You remember, if you were here, that we used to fund it under APAY by the number of kids that showed up for the first 4 months, average daily attendance. So we got to answer some of those questions. Then we got to answer what is the appropriate partnership between the state and the local entity. Most people have a little difficulty saying if the state's only going to fund half of it, then the state only ought to be able to make up half of the rules instead of 90% of the rules, which is probably what we're doing now. So those are issues that have got to be looked at. How do we determine staffing formulas is a part of it. As a part of it, less important maybe, is looking at Title 20 code, which is where all the education legislation is, and seeing what's out of date and what needs to be just wiped out instead of replaced. We've done some of that already. There's a lot more probably in that code section that needs to be just gotten rid of. So those things are going on. That to me is as important as just saying we're going to send more money. We were in a meeting, what's today, Monday, Tuesday? Last Tuesday, I was in a meeting of one of those subcommittees, and they had somebody presenting, and he was presenting information that showed that there was not a great difference in performance based on money. And so one of the members said, you need money to make a difference. And they said, well, leadership makes a difference too. And I said, and I had intervened, that's the trouble with being a former educator. You take it personally when they start down that road. And I said, you can't say that money doesn't make a difference. If you take away the money, you're going to see a big difference. If you take away the leadership, you've got a good leader here. You've got an excellent superintendent in this county. You're very fortunate in that respect. And I'm assuming you got a quality board of education, or she's been complaining too.
They're very
She
good.
makes us look good.
That's a smart superintendent. If you take away leadership, you're going to see a difference in performance too. So it's money makes a difference, leadership makes a difference, and it's the combination of the two that really is important. So we're working on it. I wish I had the answer for you.
Well, I appreciate the fact you understand the question. And I really, and if you, as a superintendent, a former superintendent, you get it. And I know Amy gets it, and I know y'all get it. But like I said, one day we need to get back to at least where we were. We weren't in a great place 10 years ago, but it's way better than where we are today. And like I said, but thank you. We're going to have to, if we stay, if we obey the law.
She's such a good superintendent, she's going to pull you out of here.
Yeah,
That's right.
If we obey the law, we've got to leave right now.
Before you leave, let me tell you one thing. Are you the chairman of the board?
Vice chair.
You're the chairman.
Chairman's late, he's going to be late.
That's a good chairman. We were going into a board of education meeting once, and I had a real controversial issue on the agenda for that day. And the chairman of the board came to me, the superintendent, said, Tom, I really think you need to let the board take the lead on this so that we get the focus of the anger and not the administration. So I thought that was a good board member.
That's right. Very good. Thank y'all. Appreciate you being here.
Meeting is over. This is KBCI.blogspot.com. George Boston Rams, Amy Carter, State Representative Tom Dickerson. Some people remaining at the program.
I know you're going to want to talk about classified health insurance.
Yes, ma'am.
And Martha is going to explain kind of the way it started and where we are with it right now, how it all happened.
In the early 2000s, I don't know if you remember, we had always had a pattern of paying for increases in health care where the state would put in if we needed to make the plan solvent, and then the employees might experience an increase, and we had this pattern. In the early 2000s, that pattern got kind of shattered because the nation as a whole was experiencing double-digit inflationary increases in healthcare. And so all of a sudden we find ourselves in a posture where our funds are running out and we're not paying for what we needed to pay for. So we've had significant employee premium increases, and we've also been still adding money on the state side. When they announced and analyzed the plan about 2 years ago, they realized that we were like out of money, that there was no reserve left, no cash on hand. They pay out, I think, $21 million a day out of state health benefit plan, and there was no reserve. They had zero fund balance at the end of the year. And in looking at usage and the makeup of the plan, it was very obvious that teachers and non-certificated personnel are 62% of the plan. The cost for teachers is covered by the employer rate and the premium. The cost for state employees, who are not a significant part of the plan, also they cover their own. But non-certs and all of the retirees were costing a lot of money, so all of us as employees were kind of subsidizing that group. The inequity was so great. I have some charts to show you, just to show the big differences. So we were looking at about a $300 million or more deficit. So it was decided that we do a number of things, and one of them started with taking our non-certs and charging a member per month more to the amount that it was costing. Unfortunately, that decision was made in July, right after you all had already passed your budgets. So I know it created a real shortfall right off the bat. And then to pre-fund it, they wanted to get money in the plan because there was zero money in the bank and they needed to pay out the $21 million. So I know that that caused a couple of issues. But we get that a little bit squared away now. We are graduating those up thanks to your representatives who fought to ease into those folks getting into the cost rather than just levying the full cost to them. So we also heard that for teachers, it would be better to have a set number ahead of time in April when you're doing your budget, something that you could plan on that was commensurate, and the net is supposed to be aggregate to the cost and the expense, and let's try and level some of this out. It didn't go out that way this time because we have different silos who we didn't breach those two and do this in a coordinated fashion that we hope very much to make those systems that lost. You guys lost on that, didn't you?
Yes, ma'am.
To make you whole. Some ended up being winners, and some, with actually, little cash after cash, and others then got shortchanged. And there has been some discussion already that we cannot even imagine cutting you short like that. We need to hold you harmless and find the money to make up that difference. I know that's a big concern. And I know that you've based your budgets on the allotment sheets that went out with that hole in there. And when we come back and do the amended budget, I think we hope to address that. Here's the bottom line. The plan still, with all of these adjustments, it's so expensive. And we have so many people on the retiree side that we will continue to have to make adjustments. Now, this should settle out how the payments flow and how the money flows. On occasion, that number may torque up a little bit, but trying to get some solidarity in the plan. But most of all, trying to keep the plan level so that the 62%, mostly teachers, retirees, and school-related personnel, have health insurance.
Here's the problem that we're facing, and I understand that it's a graduated rate increase on the classified health insurance, but we're on a shoestring literally here. We're talking about less than $200,000 at the end of fiscal year 13. Hopefully we'll have that much in our bank account. And unless there's some plan for QBE revenue to go up, we don't have, short of raising taxes, and I think Mr. Cunningham addressed that issue pretty well earlier. Where's the money going to come from, even though it's a gradual increase? Where are we going to get the money to continue to fund that?
Part of the graduation was to buy some time, honestly, till we could figure out, is there a better way to do this? Can you plan on the local level too, how you might do this, make different arrangements? Not sure. There are a lot of things being bantered about, systems seeking their own insurance plans.
Well, there's a lot of legal questions
There are
yet
a
to
lot of
be
legal
answered on
questions.
that side, and I'm certainly not a lawyer, but I've read the arguments both ways, and I see merit on both sides of it. I guess a court will have to litigate that before it's determined. But we all know if we retain the same amount of personnel year after year, we've increased because of merit pay increases. So we've got that coming, and we've got a classified health insurance rate increase if nothing else increases in our budget, if everything else stays flat. And if our QBE stays the same, then our expenditures are going up, or if QBE goes down, then that creates a further deficit. So that's what we're trying to overcome. And the only way for us to do it is to either have fewer people on staff or to raise taxes. That's the only two options that we have. But
Well, the governor's budget instructions moving forward, he's asked everybody to take cuts except on QBE. QBE got exempted. And I think in large part that's because when we had to replace $4 billion of ARROW money that we were all using to patch through, when that went away, some of that had to go to some other things. A lot of it went to Medicaid. Now he's turning the table and he's saying, Medicaid, we had to hold you harmless and replace ARROW with state funds. Now that ARROW's run out, we're not held to that standard. So he's telling Medicaid to take a 5% cut. So, it may very well be that here we go again. Maybe we're doing a little bit of a shell game, but, can we shift some things back here? We are putting out fires. Until the revenue grows at a bigger rate, we're just kind of trying to address the most immediate concerns. Maybe that offers some.
I know the last 3 years we've increased in austerity. Is that going to stabilize or go down anytime in the near future?
You went up in austerity?
The last 3 years.
No.
There was reapportionment in austerity.
You reapportioned austerity?
Well, austerity is well, this is the governor's office, though, but because of growth, you had systems that were ranging some because they had growth and austerity was a fixed number. They'd have 11% austerity. You have some systems that lost people. I don't know if you're growing or losing. Also, they're at 20%. So we having to try to get that back in line again because it's unfair to somebody that's had growth for 5 years. Now they're at 11% austerity compared to QBE and other systems at 20% austerity. So, and then when you've had some growth in a few years.
Actually gone down.
Somehow when we looked at that, but it was a very minute changes. We didn't put everybody back at 15.4%, which is where it is now. But you do have systems out there that you look at the percentage of their QBE, they're not at 15. I don't know what yours is at. But,
percentage, it's not grown drastically, but yet it has gone up.
And so that's why it wasn't, the total dollars remained the same, but we had to try to get that back in line, and that's why you saw a slight increase in yours and some saw a decrease, because it was getting way disproportionate system to system. And in the past, we were told, no, you can't change austerity, even with growth. And so they didn't for several years, but starting in the last year, I think they did. So yes, you did see an increase in austerity.
I just have one other question. You know, I'm going to hit equalization.
Of course.
I have to say that.
The E word.
Why, in a system our size, and I think we're around 85–86% free and reduced lunch, why is our equalization as low as what it is? I mean, we lost $500,000 in equalization.
It's your relative rank and wealth per student is what is the